While William Austen was not a prolific writer, he did write one of the most famous short stories of his time, and with it, one of the most renowned characters of the early 19th century. The story Peter Rugg, the Missing Man, uses many literary techniques to tell a timeless story. In particular, William Austen uses the setting's discrepancy in time and place to create a sense of desperation and longing for home.
The discrepancy in the time and place is always related to the main character, Peter Rugg. When it comes to the discrepancy in place, Peter Rugg is always wandering, fruitlessly writing to Boston. He can never ascertain his exact location, and he is often nowhere he thinks he is. He can't even manage to get on a path that leads him home.
Before personally meeting Peter Rugg, a man outside of Bennett's Hotel in Hartford, Connecticut tells the narrator, Jonathan Dunwell, about his encounter with Rugg. The stranger at the hotel tells Dunwell that he has seen Rugg on the road for the last 20 years. On his last encounter with him, Rugg asked the stranger the distance to Boston. When the stranger told Rugg he was 100 miles from Boston, Rugg said, "How can you say so? I was told last evening it was 50, and I have traveled all night." When the stranger told Rugg that he was actually traveling from Boston, Peter Rugg exclaimed, "Alas, it is all turned back. Boston shifts in the wind and plays all around the compass. One man tells me it is to the east, another to the west, and the guideposts too, they all point the wrong way." Thusly, readers can sense how desperately Rugg wants to get home, along with his frustration at not being able to reach his destination, or even get on what he sees as a path to Boston.
Peter Rugg is not only physically lost in wandering, but he's also lost in time. However, Rugg must have some sense of time since he often mentions previous encounters with travelers. For example, when Dunwell first meets Rugg, Dunwell informs Rugg that he is in Hartford, Connecticut, next to the Connecticut River, and not in Newburyport, Massachusetts, next to the Merrimack River.
Rugg later mentions this first encounter with Dunwell when he meets another traveler who tries to explain that Rugg is in Concord, Delaware, not Concord, Massachusetts. Upon hearing how far he is from Boston, Rugg exclaims, 500 miles! This beats the Connecticut River."
However, the issue seems to lie within the passage of time. When Dunwell asks Rugg how long he has been traveling to Boston, all he can say is, "I cannot tell precisely. It seems a considerable time." Peter Rugg is unaware or perhaps unwilling to understand the passage of time. In reality, so much time has passed by since he first started traveling back to Boston that everything he knew about the world has changed. In fact, most of what he knew is gone.
An example of how the passage of time has transformed the world Peter Rugg once knew is in Rugg's encounter with Mrs. Croft. In an attempt to learn more about Peter Rugg, the narrator visits Rugg's former home on Middle Street in Boston. It is there that he finds Mrs. Croft, who is now the sole resident of the former Rugg family home.
Mrs. Croft kindly recounts her encounter with Peter Rugg. She tells Dunwell that Rugg had come to her home just a year before asking for Mrs. Rugg. When Mrs. Croft tries to tell Rugg that Mrs. Rugg had died more than 20 years before, Peter Rugg refuses to believe the old woman and demands his wife come to the door.
Unfortunately, as Rugg tries to discover what happened to his wife, he continues to find more things have changed. Streets that had mentioned ties to being a colony were gone. The market where he and his family used to shop had been abandoned. In fact, while his market had been abandoned, 3 more markets had sprung up in the town to replace the only one he'd known to have been in the city. The ferry he had known was now replaced by a bridge. Most importantly, his friends, family, and acquaintances were all gone and unknown to the current inhabitant of his former home.
Unable to understand the reality of his situation, Rugg convinces himself that he must be in another Boston. Ironically, he says, "City of Boston it may be, but it's not the Boston where I live." This statement is true because he has spent so much time wandering the roads to and from Boston. That city he now stands on is not the Boston he once lived in. Upon deciding he was in the wrong Boston, Peter Rugg sadly states, "No home tonight." These words contrast heavily against those that he tells every traveler he meets, that he must get home tonight. Adding to this contrast is the irony of his statement, since he is finally physically in the right place, but he is in the wrong time. Thus, the discrepancy in the time is best captured by these disheartened words.
Through these heartbreaking encounters, the reader cannot help but sense Peter Rugg's desperation and longing for home. The reader knows that Rugg will likely never find rest, as he will not stop writing until he reaches Boston. Even when he reaches Boston, it won't be the home he once knew. As more time passes, not only will Rugg recognize his home less and less, making it seem farther and farther away, but his appearance will easily give away that he does not belong to the present. In his analysis of Peter Rugg's story, James Matthews puts it best when he says that Rugg believes that somehow time and circumstance will defer to his will, and that in his illusion he ignores the dynamics of American life, which in every era undergo meteoric changes into new and bewildering forms. In other words, Rugg's stubborn refusal to accept reality as it is, instead of as it was, keeps him wandering. In this way, the constant discrepancy between time and place continues to haunt Peter Rugg and makes the reader wonder whether one can still find him traveling, inquiring the way to Boston.